Hello, everyone, and welcome to Dream Leapers with Harriette Cole. I am very excited about today's guest. We've been talking about her coming on my show for a really long time. She's a very busy woman, incredibly creative. My friend who I've known for more than 30 years, let me tell you about her. She is a rock star in the world of interior and product design. She is Sheila Bridges. Sheila's journey from Philadelphia to the pinnacle of design excellence showcases both her resilience and her unparalleled creativity. Her designs grace esteemed spaces across the nation. Many people you don't know, many people you do, including former President Bill Clinton's Harlem offices to the current residence of Vice President Kamala Harris. Her iconic Harlem Toile pattern is a testament to her unique fusion of African-American culture and classic design, and it is seen all over the world, adorning walls, fabrics, and decor items. Sheila's meticulous eye for detail and commitment to her craft have earned her widespread recognition and praise, showcasing her designs in renowned art museums and collaborations with major brands like Wedgwood and Williams-Sonoma, as well as many others. Please join us as we delve into Sheila's incredible journey and her lasting impact on the world of design. Welcome, Sheila.
Good morning. Good morning. Oh my goodness. Wow. That sounded so lovely. Thank you.
It's you. I have watched you for all these years. And, Dream Leapers is this platform I created some years ago to bring people on who are doing it, to inspire people who want to do it, whatever it is in their hearts. And I feel like when they hear other people's stories of challenge and triumph and all the things, it's like, okay, nobody got to the magical place by just
true. And what is the magical place? Is there a magical place? I don't know. I think it's just a continuance of it. It's not like we get to a place and then it's static and you stay there. There's always, movement, momentum, and a lot of hard work. So
absolutely. And I told you it was about a month or so ago, because I'm still old school. In the mail came a Bloomingdale's catalog, and I guess it was, now everything is coming so early for the holidays, super early. I feel like it might have even been in September or end of September.
Yeah.
And here comes this beautiful catalog, and there are at least 5 pages with Sheila Bridges designs. My husband George and I were squealing. We were like screaming in our apartment, like, look, Sheila's everywhere.
I know, it's like a Harlem Toile takeover in the Bloomingdale's catalog. I think there's a new one out, but they neglected to send it to me, but now we got a copy. But I think it featured several of our collaborations that they sell. I think the Wedgwood, which was our first collaboration also with Bloomingdale's. And then I think the Le Creuset, which was launched in September. And I'm not sure if there was something else in there too. Maybe Ginger Lily, I think the silk.
Ginger Lily, the silks, I think those are in there as well.
Great.
And, just look, for people who remember or even know anything about how catalogs are made.
Yes.
Every page is important. The company has to be sure to sell a certain amount of merchandise per page. It's a business.
Yeah.
For your products to fill so many pages really is an acknowledgement of their faith that these products are going to sell. It's not because they like Sheila Bridges. It's because they believe those products are going to move.
You're correct. You're absolutely right. And they've done, incredibly well. I think every time I launch, or almost every time we launch something new or do a new collaboration, I think that the sales, kind of exceed expectations, and, people are always very pleasantly surprised, at least my collaborators, which is, why I guess people keep collaborating with me, which is really exciting.
It's so exciting. And so I want to take us back for people who may not know what Harlem Toile is, what toile is. Yeah. Can you set us up just with a lesson about what is toile?
Yeah.
What is Harlem Toile de Jouy? Right. And when did you start it? Give us a little history lesson.
So toile is a French textile. Toile really means cloth or linen. It's a linen cloth. It's toile de Jouy, which is referring to a place in France. There's a place called Jouy-en-Josas, which is a small town, probably very, very close to Versailles, for those of you who have actually been to France or been to Paris. And Versailles is really a suburb. It doesn't sound very glamorous when I put it this way. It's probably about 20 minutes outside of Paris. So Jouy-en-Josas. So Harlem Toile de Jouy is, or Toile de Jouy is basically cloth from Jouy, from this region in France. So, I think my idea was to just sort of play with that idea. And since I live in Harlem and have lived in Harlem for so many years, and that was a lot of the inspiration for this wall covering, which is what it was initially, and also textile. That's how I came up with the name Harlem Toile de Jouy.
And so the typical things that you see on toile, what are because there's scenes,
right? So I think one of the things I love about toile is that it tells stories, and historically toiles have been used to tell all different stories. I think the challenge for me as a creative and as a designer is that I've always loved French toiles, but when I was searching for one for my own home, I couldn't find one that I really connected to, that resonated for me in a personal way. Many times the scenes can be anything. They could be pastoral, they can be allegorical, they can be classical. And usually it's two colors and kind of like a neutral ground in terms of the background. And they sort of also document history. So I know one very, very popular toile from many years ago was depicted the hot air balloon in France. So when they first launched a hot air balloon, this became a very, very popular subject matter that you would also see in toiles. So I think toiles, fabrics, textiles, wall coverings, for me, they're a medium in which, they reflect back the culture and the history and also what's happening at the time. So it's, as a designer, I'm a visual storyteller. So it's for me a great medium to work in to tell my own stories.
And your own stories that we see on Harlem Toile de Jouy include double Dutch and getting hair done. And
right, exactly. So I grew up in Philadelphia, and Philadelphia is very different than New York, but there's some things I think within Black culture that are consistent no matter, kind of where you live, at least in my experience. And growing up in West Philadelphia, I mean, we were just always out in the street. Playing, my brother and his friends playing basketball, touch football, my girlfriends and I, jumping rope, and sort of doing all those kinds of activities. And, when I moved to Harlem, I obviously noticed a lot of the same things. So those were, for me, a lot of them were recollections of my childhood, of my youth that were, just gave me a kind of a warm feeling. But at the same time, it also became a way for me to kind of address many of the stereotypes, about African Americans that have traditionally kind of stood. So I've kind of incorporate that into the toile as well. So, it's a little subversive, I guess, in certain ways. But I think
what are some of the other scenes that you have?
So there's a dancing scene where there's a boom box, and but everybody's dressed in very traditional, almost like 17th century, clothing, 18th century clothing. And so there's a certain formality to it that looks, I think, very French. So there's a dancing scene with a boom box. There's a picnic scene where they're having a picnic and eating fried chicken and watermelon. There's a hairdressing scene. Yeah, watermelon, of course. And you know what? I love watermelon, but you know, it does happen to be a stereotype. And then we have a very, you know, sort of challenging history with watermelon, you know, whether it's from, you know, voter suppression to, you know, asking people how many seeds are in a watermelon and preventing us to vote. I mean, so for me, I try to layer those things into the storytelling without them hopefully feeling forced. But I think if you look closely, you know, it's interpretive. And I think a lot of people might see certain things that kind of resonate for them. And certainly for me, it was more than seeing, I don't know, a little shepherdess frolicking in a field.
Which is what it normally is, you know, with
many times, you know, what it can be.
With the corseted waist and the giant skirt and, you know, all of those things.
So anyway, so it was fun. And, you know, I designed the pattern 17 years ago. I mean, it's hard to believe that it's been such a long time, and it really has had legs to stand on. And, you know, I'm honored that it has been included in so many museum exhibitions, but also now in a lot of permanent collections. From the first museum to acquire it was the Smithsonian Cooper Hewitt. That's the Smithsonian's Design Museum in New York City, the Museum of African American History and Culture in Washington, D.C., most recently the Brooklyn Museum and the Philadelphia Museum of Art. We also have, you know, different iterations in the RISD Museum, the Montreal Museum of Art. I mean, there are a lot of, and the Metropolitan Museum
and the Studio Museum, right? I remember buying
Studio Museum. Yes. So the Studio Museum, I don't know that they have it, like it's not in an exhibit, but they have always, their museum store has always, you know, really been supportive of me. And we've always throughout, you know, the journey have sold a lot of products through their museum shop. And I think there are things there currently. So
I was just at the African American Museum of History and Culture in DC just a week ago.
Oh, you're kidding.
Yeah, I went to a premiere of Rustin, a screening of Rustin, which was really fabulous. I recommend that everybody see that. And as I was walking by the store, I saw the silk robe and the eye mask and the turban. That's what
they have that there now?
Yeah, it was on a mannequin. Very displayed.
Wow. Okay, that's new. That's my Gingerly collaboration. I hope you saw my exhibit, which is on the 4th floor in the Cultural Expressions room.
It was, the museum was closed and the Obama were there. So, which we didn't know, but both and Barack were there. So they sent us exactly where we were.
I'm glad that things are in that. We have a huge presence in the museum store. Unfortunately, they don't really have the goods online so much. You kind of have to, it's old school. You have to either go in or you have to call the museum store. We did a scarf exclusively for them, which is different than the scarf that we did for the Metropolitan Museum store. And there's everything, you know, from Wedgwood to our scarves, our tote bags. I guess, you know, some of the ginger lily eye masks, hair wrap, and
beautiful,
which are beautiful. Yeah. And the robe is beautiful. So there are quite a number of things there.
Exciting. And what is the exhibition there about you?
So it's just part of the permanent collection. It's on their Cultural Expressions floor, which is the 4th floor. And the backdrop is my wallpaper, but it's the wallpaper Wedgwood is part of the permanent collection there at the museum as well. So yeah.
That is so exciting. Yeah. Hey guys, this is Dream Leapers with Harriette Cole. We are here with Sheila Bridges. I'm so excited. We've been talking on Dream Leapers for a long time. She has been doing her craft, really creating, because it's on a lot of different levels, creating for all of the years that we've known each other, which is more than 30 years, a long, long time. And to see the fruit of the work at this point just is really nice, because many people who have long careers, look, the reality is there's an ebb and a flow. That's just how it goes, period. And to see the flow, you know, this is a lovely time for people to see for you to see and for us to see your work at this level. I want to just talk about Harlem Toile for one more minute before we move on. So I remember the wallpaper was the first product. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah. Wallpaper and then the fabric right after.
Right. So, I knew because I knew when you made it. And then one day on whatever show Gayle King was on then, it was not what she's on now, in her home or office or somewhere.
In her dining room.
Yellow wall of Harlem Toile. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. So she has it, I guess, in her dining room area. So I think there have been a lot of images. I know during the pandemic, when many of us were, working from home and they were also broadcasting from home, you often would see her with the yellow Harlem Toile backdrop. That was kind of the new set.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So let's pivot to something that many people are celebrating right now, which is the 50th anniversary of hip hop. And I mean, hard to believe that. So the 50th anniversary predates you or me, but the crescendo, like the golden age of hip hop, was very important to you and me and so many other people in terms of launching a part of your career, mine, and other folks that we know. I would love for you to share the story of you as a designer kind of getting that first ability to work with one of the giants in hip hop, Andre Harrell, who was such a visionary and someone who appreciated needing and wanting support from someone who knew something that he didn't know as well. Talk about Andre.
Yeah, I miss Andre. He was one of my favorite clients, and eventually we became good friends after having designed and decorated several of his homes throughout the years. And he's really the first person who gave me kind of a break, a really big break. I was working for an interior design firm in Manhattan, and but kind of on the side, trying to start my own thing, which was really difficult with a full-time job. And I think I met him at a party in Harlem, and we started talking. And to make a very long story short, he told me that if I found an apartment for him, that he would let me decorate it. But it took a minute to get there, which was me calling, back when we just, had to call and speak to somebody's secretary. And one day, I guess his secretary was out to lunch, and he actually answered the phone himself. And I called, and he said, that I had to come over right now to his office to kind of pitch this idea. So I think I pretended to be, sick or something. I don't remember what I did, but I got out of there, went over to his office at Uptown Records at the time. And that's when I told him, I can find you an apartment, the type of apartment you're looking for, because I guess apparently he had not been able to find, apartment that he liked. So I was pretty confident in that. And I had a friend who was a real estate broker. Mm-hmm. So together, she and I, found an apartment, and ironically, he ended up not getting that apartment, but he did really stick to his word. And so when he did get a new apartment, he hired me to that apartment. It really mostly was decoration because I think at the time it was a rental, but then he bought another home, and then that required, full kind of gut renovation, which I was, in charge of. So, and that project ended up on the cover of House and Garden magazine, which in our industry, House and Garden, the U.S. House and Garden is no longer around, but that was pretty much the pinnacle, and the standard in New York at the time in the 1990s. So that for me really kind of put me on the map in that on a different level.
And you have had incredible success with not just doing projects, but having them presented in the best design magazines in the world.
Yeah.
How does that work?
It's hard. It's a lot more difficult than it seems. Kind of back when print was, again, kind of the gold standard. You would have to send images to editors. And also, I think I'm very good at storytelling. So I would try to make their job much easier, because I already kind of could pitch the story, what it looked like, and could help them kind of envision that. So I think, so much, this, so much about business is about relationships. Mm-hmm. And I've tried very, very hard over the years to make sure that I've always cultivated great relationships, both in the press and the media, in addition to just, in business, just generally speaking, because that's really a lot of times what it comes down to. Sure. And so when I was a design assistant working for an architectural firm, I was always meeting young editors, but those editors eventually became senior editors, editors in chief, and so, some of the relationships I have, which have, enabled me to get someone's ear or for them to pay attention, are relationships I've had in the industry since I was in my 20s. So
that is a really important point that I hope people hear. It's like treating everybody with respect, valuing every person. That person, like the secretary, the assistant, those are the people who are the door. They are at the door. They're the gatekeepers. They're the gatekeepers. And if you ignore them, it is at your own peril. And as you point out, people just move around, and
it's true. People move around so much. You never know where something is going to come from. And I've found that, the dots don't always just, line up perfectly. Sometimes they can be just scattered. And so it is, I think, that's something I feel like that I've always been very, very good at, and just, again, kind of cultivating those relationships and just, staying in touch with people over the years, dropping them a line, letting them know what you're doing. I mean, and it was never about being pushy and trying to force my work or myself, kind of onto people, because people have to, sort of sometimes come to it on their own. But I think, look, I am my best salesperson, and that's why people are always fascinated. Like, how are you always, with the magazines, television show, all this stuff, and you don't have publicist or an agent or whatever? And I think, like many artists, because I understand my brand better than anyone else. Mm-hmm. And so I know how to present it and to sell it in ways that I think other people probably don't. So.
Well, and I think you are unique, or at least unusual, in this sense. A lot of artists make their art, but cannot talk about it. Those are two completely different heads. You put on a different hat.
Well, it's just, it's left brain and right brain, or left side, I mean, I think you have to be both, it's not just, I say this to students all the time, young people who getting out of design school, you can be creative as you want to be, and brilliantly creative. But if you don't know, how to invoice a client, or you don't know how to get paid for something, or how to promote your work, sadly, nobody is going to know. And unless, I didn't have the luxury, or nor did you, of, having a trust fund or some, just some wealth or something that was there for me,
figure it out.
Some kind of backstop, if I couldn't figure it out. So I really had to figure it out. And I think also, we're of that generation where, our parents, I mean, again, very fortunate to have had, two parents who were very supportive, generally meaning supportive in terms of, me getting an undergraduate education. But then when I wanted to go to design school, they were like, we're done. our job is done. You're on your own. So, I'd take out loans. I was working full time. I was going to design school at night at Parsons School of Design. I mean, it was a lot of work. So I think, sadly, I think my business, because it's so much about aesthetics and beautiful things, and we make everything look so beautiful, especially now with social media and platforms like Instagram, that people forget, about all the grit behind the glamour. I mean, my life is glamorous literally 10% of the time. The other 90% of the time, there's not a whole lot that's glamorous about what we do. It's a lot of really hard and complicated work.
It's work. I want to stay with hip hop for a minute. You've worked with a number of people in that space, and I believe that you have also been fortunate to navigate that space, to be out all night long when it took whatever it took, because staying up till 3 o'clock in the morning, but also not. I think we haven't talked about this directly, but I do not think that you suffered abuse at the hands of any of these people.
And again, this is like a touchy topic and something we've never discussed really. But, the more these things come out in the media now, about all kinds of people who we both know, many of whom, some of whom have been clients of mine, others who I knew, other women in that space. Some of the women who've come out, with things in the last few years are people who I knew.
Yeah, me too.
It's really disturbing. I've got to say, I'm not shocked by it, because I saw a lot. And I do, and I think about it frequently, how lucky I am, how fortunate I am that I never found myself in a situation that I had to get myself out of.
Right.
That as a young woman, because I was really young. I think I was about 30 when I started my business, 29. 30. And I mean, I just remember, I had a roommate at the time because I couldn't afford have an apartment by myself. And so I had a roommate, and she would be leaving for work. I would be coming in.
Oh, right.
It was like, what, and I was just coming in because the only time I could, really get the attention and focus, more than attention, the focus of these guys in the music industry, in the entertainment industry, was at night. I mean, and it was crazy, as we've discussed before. I mean, I would go to strip clubs, I would go to people's parties, all kinds. I mean, I saw all kinds of stuff.
In the 90s, there were so many drugs that it would make
so many drugs, so much alcohol. And that just wasn't me. That was never something I was interested in, thankfully, or caught up in. And the other thing I think is that, I don't think those guys really, like, I didn't want anything from them. What I wanted from them were not the things that other women wanted from them. I wanted them to focus on, like, the fabric or the wallpaper or the color, you know what I mean? Like, for their dining room. I was not interested in, you know what I mean, trying to hook up and become somebody's. So for me, I think that somehow that was a part of who I was, and my body language, and kind of that's just how I presented myself, and I didn't, my. Well,
I remember you were safe. I was safe. There were people who were safe for whatever the reasons are, and also, as you point out, people who were not for whatever the reasons are.
And again, in no way, of course, to victim shame or blame, because plenty of those women were intelligent women, who just happened to be, I feel like, in the wrong place, the wrong time. I mean, you know what I mean? I think about how many rides I got, somebody's driver who drove me home at 4 a.m. or all of that kind of stuff. It just, I feel very fortunate. It's funny. I have a note that I found recently from my father, who passed away several years ago from Alzheimer's. But it was a note about one of these clients of mine. And it was, that person was in the news media for something that was, kind of sordid. And my father literally mailed me, someone sent it to him, this article from, I don't know if it was from like the New York Post or the Daily News or whatever. And he wrote in his handwriting, and I have it, I took a picture of it recently and sent it to somebody. He said, I'm concerned about you, and I want you to be safe. And, I think when you're young, you just don't think those things, and especially as a woman, you know what I mean? You just don't think those things are going to happen to you until they do.
And thank God it didn't.
Thank God it didn't.
Yeah.
But I came across that recently, and I realized how the perception to my parents, because that was not how I grew up, and those are not the kind of men that I necessarily, spent time with.
And no matter what age you are, your parents worry about you, and if it's in the news, it's certainly
absolutely, for sure.
Worry. Let me remind folks, this is Dream Leapers with Harriette Cole. So happy to be here today with Sheila Bridges. She is author, interior designer, creative director, product designer. She's done all kinds of things and is here to talk to us about that. And we were just talking about hip hop, and there's some wonderful things about hip hop, and it was an incredible time. I recently interviewed Nicole Avant, who is Clarence Avant's daughter, of course, and she's written a book about the loss of her mother, and she talks about how Clarence Avant was mentored to so many, including Andre Harrell. Mm-hmm. And Andre gave me my start in media training. I remember that, I think. I was working on my book, How to Be. It wasn't even done yet. And he said, "What are you working on?" And I told him about the book. And he says, "Well, can you teach that to my artists?" I said, "Teach them what?" He says, "Teach them how to be." And I was like, "Sure." That was 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And, that part of my business is still happening. And there's so many people from that time who were incredibly creative and generous.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, that I think what, was so exceptional, I think, particularly about Andre, and, obviously I've had other relationships, clients, with people who are also have been generous, but he really was generous in a way that he sort of didn't have to be. And I felt like a lot of the guys who were, in sort of his position or had similar paths were not, you know what I mean? And I think it was about, what you could, give them as opposed to what they could sort of give you. And he really, for me, it really was transformative. Sadly, of course, he passed away during the pandemic, and one of, it's terrible. I guess we're at this age now that so many people I know have passed away, whether it had to do with the pandemic or health reasons or whatever. We're just at that phase. But, and once in a while, you come across an exchange or a text, or at least I do in my phone, because I save my contacts. And I remember seeing my last exchange with him, and he was excited about something that he was working on. And I said, thank you. I had thanked him. I said, thank you so much for supporting me or something. And he said, thank you for teaching me how to live. And that was like our last text exchange, which is really powerful.
Very, very powerful. And, one of the things that was true about so many people, so many of the entrepreneurs, the successful entrepreneurs during hip hop, is many of them came from meager means, and they just weren't exposed to a lot of things. Yeah. And it was true about you, which was also true about me growing up. We grew up in households where we were exposed to tons of things.
Right. Correct.
And that only helped the launch pad to be shorter. And I remember at one point, because one of the things that you talked about a lot back in the day was finding art, and introducing a lot of your clients to some of the great artists, all kinds of artists, but including Black artists who people did not know. There's a level of trust that this I want to talk about in terms of being an interior designer. This is one of the most intimate jobs you could have, because you're in somebody's home. You're learning. You learn everything about them. You learn more about them than maybe even their spouse knows.
Yeah, I know what's in that left side night table, top drawer, bottom drawer.
How do you build trust, Sheila? How do you do that?
Well, I mean, I think it takes time, and it takes time to cultivate trust, as it does in any relationship. I think there is a very kind of steep curve to get there. But I think, baby steps, like anything else. Once people trust you, with a few things, and you deliver, then you can build upon that trust, and I think, certainly with that group of men, I built trust to the point that, I got into, it's, one of our jobs that people, don't talk about as designers, we're sort of like a lifestyle concierge. So, it used to be that I would, people would ask me, I would buy gifts for their girlfriends. They'd ask me, they trusted my taste, which again is, taste is subjective, and it's kind of a construct, really, because, people have different taste, and, who's to say that your taste is better or worse than mine? It's just different, but, based on, I think, where they were trying to go or what they wanted represented, I had a knowledge, I think, of some of those things. So, I would go to Bergdorf and, pick out jewelry, and to Hermes to buy whatever it was. And those are things or places that may not have necessarily, been on their radar, to choose, but somehow they trusted that I was not going to, steer them wrong. Now, if they decided, to pay for like a boob job for Christmas, that I couldn't, I was not the go-to for that. Meanwhile, this should be called Backstory, because everybody, my friends, I always joke, oh, I'm going to have a podcast called Backstory, and then tell everybody about there's so much stuff.
I'm sure everybody who's tuned in now is like, what? Tell me one more thing. So here's where I want to go now. It's like these bookends. When President Bill Clinton retired, he moved to Harlem. He moved his offices to Harlem.
Did he retire, or was
well, from the presidency?
Yes, okay.
From the presidency. When his 2 terms were over and he had to vacate the White House, his office, he chose to be in Harlem, and he chose you, to design his space. How in the world did that happen?
I know, but that was through relationships too. I mean, first of all, oddly, and my father really didn't get involved in these things, but he's really the first person who said to me, when the rumor started that he was going to be, moving to Harlem, he said, "Oh, are you going to do that project?" And I thought, no, am I going to do? How am I going to do that? And I think that's a lot of it too. Is just, a lot of times we don't even think about the things that we can do and what's possible, right? And so I think for me, I always just, was focused on whatever work I had at hand, instead of always thinking kind of bigger, which I've gotten better as I've grown in my business. But he's the one who really put that thought into my head. And then for me, generally, once something's in my head, then I'm good at, working on what I need to do to get there. And again, that came through relationships. I think I had dated a guy who worked on Capitol Hill. I reached out to him. I was friends with somebody else. I started just circling with relationships, and I knew Vernon Jordan, and you know, he was another person. So I just was like, okay, how can I just eventually just kind of, you know, get in here, chisel away kind of at this from different angles. And if he hears my name from all different people in all different capacities in his life, whether it's from, you know, his friend Vernon Jordan to a member of his staff to, you know, whatever it is, I'm going to keep working at that. And it ended up, you know, working out. And he was such a great client, because I think one of the big challenges we have as designers is that people can't make decisions. I mean, they just can't. They can't, or they won't. I mean, they can, they just won't. People will just circle around something over and over and over and over again, which is exhausting to us as designers.
Of course.
And so, you know, obviously, you know, he was accustomed to being able to make decisions and make sound
in the
moment. And so it was a pleasure to work with someone who had a very, you know, clear idea of what he wanted. And so, you know, it's our job to execute that and get it done.
And so, you know, much more recently, we have the first woman of color as the vice president of the United States, Kamala Harris. Yeah. And you designed that space, which has been here forever. So it's the, you know, it's interior design, like not rebuilding stuff, right?
It's well, so yeah. So the vice president's residence it's a bipartisan home it's been used really since Walter Mondale was the first vice president who moved in. The home, actually, it's a Queen Anne house, which belonged to, it was always used, I think, by an admiral at the Navy. The house is actually still maintained by the U.S. Navy, and the grounds, you know, one observatory circle is still a part of that. It was very, you know, interesting. I'm trying to remember initially, I think, you know, when they were elected, I kept thinking, I think what happens is most people immediately want to focus on the White House. Like,
of course,
the White House. Oh, are you going to try to do the White House? And I thought, no, I think the vice president's residence is way more interesting than the White House. And so, you know, so I tried to fly under the radar with that, which is, I think I'm pretty good at that, because I don't always do what everybody else does or focus on what everybody else is focused on. So I think probably more people were focused on the White House. And still now there's no design. I mean, one designer, Mark Sykes, who's an interior designer out of LA, has done, I think, Jill Biden's office in the West Wing. But other than that, you know, they've never hired someone to just redo the White House the way that you heard about Michael Smith, who is another designer who did the White House for the Obamas, you know, so
working with the vice president, like a person in office, has got to be way different from.
Yeah, I mean, it was just, there was a lot of layers. It was a very difficult job, you know, for the obvious reasons and the not so obvious reasons. So there's, you know, the administration, the vice president's residence is funded, or the furnishing of it is through a foundation, the vice president's residence foundation, the vice president's residence foundation. Yeah. Residence Foundation. So there's a board that is, you know, who is really in charge. I mean, so technically the board is really my client more than the vice president and the second gentleman, because that's who creates the funding. They have to raise funds. Obviously, it's not taxpayer money, so they have to raise funds for that. So So anyway, and then there's the Navy, because the house is owned by the Navy. So there's a lot of rules and protocol having to do with the house with the Navy. And then there's, of course, the stewards of the house, and that's, the vice president and the second gentleman. So there were a lot of moving parts.
See, that's part of what people don't even necessarily understand. Design is not just coming in and making a pretty.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think people, I think, again, people are, I wish I had something pretty to show. I don't know. Here's a pillow, in my living room. That's fun too. We get to that eventually, but there is a tremendous amount of work that is administrative, that is, very challenging, that has to do with it, and the level of approvals and budget and protocol. It was a lot. It was a lot. So, but anyway, the result, I'm really thrilled with, and I hope one day everyone gets to see it, because it's really beautiful, and I'm very proud of the work that we did. So.
That's fantastic. Hey guys, this is Dream Leapers with Harriette Cole. We are talking to Sheila Bridges about her incredible career. I hope you have you're listening real close, because there's so much wisdom that she's sharing with us right now. So Sheila, we just have a few more minutes for people who are interested in design.
Yeah.
Today, in this economy and just this world in which we live today, what advice can you offer to them for strategy, for resilience, creativity, to just, move forward with their dreams?
I don't know. That's a little broad and kind of tough. I mean, I think at the end of the day, if I had to kind of encapsulate for myself, what has worked, I can sort of speak to that. Mm-hmm. Number one, I love what I do. I was always passionate about design, about art and creativity, and that's what I wanted to pursue. I had friends who took jobs because they thought they'd make a lot of money, or they would, get this or that, and then, in their free time would cultivate their interests, and mine was the opposite. I didn't really care about money. I cared about doing what I loved to do, because, many of us, certainly from our generation, it was like, I'm going to work hard no matter where I work. If I work for you, if I work for me. So if I am going to work hard and have to work a lot, let's just start with really liking what you do. And I think you have to sort of ask yourself, are you passionate about what you're doing? And if you are, that also means that you want to kind of hone your craft, right? So I'm always looking for inspiration. I mean, that's part of the reason people are always like, you're always traveling, you're always doing all these different things. Well, part of it is because that helps me. That helps feed like my creative soul, and it's necessary to continue. Creativity is not a gift, like in the way that people, I think, sometimes assume that, like, oh, she's creative, but he's not. Or I wish I could be creative. Well, I think most people are creative. I just don't think most people have been encouraged to kind of pursue their creativity. But it's like any skill set. You have to work at it. You have to hone it. I have to practice and work at my creativity all the time. Mm-hmm. As a writer, we've both, written books. You get better at writing the more you write. You also get better at writing the more you read. So, I sort of approach it the same way. The more I see in the world, that just, I take all of that in, and that just helps me to see things in a different way, or see things beyond what I've just seen. Oh, I can create that now that I've seen this. So I think a lot of it are those two things. And then I think there's no real shortcut. I think, we live in this world now. There's a lot of smoke and mirrors with social media. But, the way you, get to hopefully the top or stay there really is hard work. And, you know, while my life is great, I'm not going to pretend that there haven't been a lot of, sacrifices that I've had to make to my personal life and otherwise, in order to get here and to kind of, and to stay here. So I sort of joke to people that I want to be, I want to be like the artist formerly known as Prince, but without the opioids, like I just want to be able to, stay in this space, but it's a highly competitive space. And so for me, I didn't, again, like we said in the beginning, I didn't have the luxury of just having a big bank account. So my business was always very, very diverse, meaning I wrote books, I had a television show, I designed products, I designed, for interiors for clients, all these different things I had going on, because that way, if the revenue stream, in one sector was not great, because our business very closely follows the economy, right, perhaps I was making money from something else I was doing. So that was really
smart,
which was really necessary, so that's not, it's not just about creativity. It's about flexibility. I think your ability to be flexible, to a willingness to pivot when things are not working and you keep just trying to make it work and it's not working. You've got to pivot. I've been taking boxing classes lately and there's a lot of pivoting involved. So I think that's I don't know. That's
well. Thank you and congratulations again, everybody. Yes, you can find Sheila's creations on her website, SheilaBridges.com. Also, all those museums that you mentioned.
Yes, and we've got stuff at Williams-Sonoma, Le Creuset, Bloomingdale's, Ginger Lily London, Lord of Seraphine. There's so many great things for the holidays.
The candles.
Shameless plug.
No, but look. They're great holiday gifts.
They are.
I've been buying them for a long time, not just because Sheila's my friend, but they're great. And people are like, ooh, that's nice. And at all different price points. So that's why I wanted to talk to her before the holidays so you all can go out and get some goodies for yourself and your friends. Sheila, I'm so proud of you. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for having me. This was great.
Excellent. Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Until next time, have a great day and make it count.